Now the question is, do we need the police? Well, what a 2-3 weeks it's been since everything has unfolded, protests have started, and the movement has just been getting stronger and stronger. And the latest update is now that all 3 officers have finally been charged with George Floyd's death, and we've celebrated Breonna Taylor's birthday, and let's not forget about Ahmaud Arbery and all of the other incredible black men and women who have been killed by police officers. Now the question is, what do we do with the police? Like, we've had this conversation. I feel for a long time it's been brewing and brewing. For me, it started with the whole Eric Garner situation, if anybody remembers that.
The father of 6 was rushed to a local hospital where he died.
That was the most recent thing I can remember for like police reform. But recently, Minnesota, hell no. Where is Minnesota on the map actually? Wait, Minneapolis is in Minnesota. Big brain. Okay, well, Minneapolis has recently defunded their police department. It basically kind of means that like they'll be getting like way less funding, and I heard that they're gonna even disband the police, which is like even bigger. So a lot of people are asking, aka me, I was asking, what exactly does defunding the police look like? What does it mean? And I went down a YouTube and Spotify podcast black hole, and I got this research from a podcast called Social Distance. It's pretty good. You know, get updates on what's going on in the world right now in our corona, moving to post-corona world. But basically what it means is that the funding for the police is going to be less. There's going to be less money allocated towards the police. And if you want to know exactly how much it costs to maintain a police force, let's take a look at the biggest city in America, most populous city, New York City, you know, land of freedom and opportunity, whatnot, where dreams are concrete jungles, where dreams are made of, thanks to Alicia Keys and Jay-Z. The police get $6 billion in New York City alone, just the city, just the tiny island on the map in the corner. Yeah, that's $6 billion. They don't need that money. They don't. I can't even fathom like how many zeros is 6 million, 6 billion, billion with a B. So that's way too much, and apparently they're being cut not generously actually, just barely. 3.9% of their funding will be cut. What is that gonna do? Like, there's another department, the Department of Youth, and for like aftercare, after school programming and things like that, that's being cut by 32%. So like, community resources are being cut instead of the police force. And we could take the history of the police in New York, for example, way back to the 1980s with the war on drugs and the war on crime. You know, everybody remember Reagan, right? Well, I don't. I wasn't alive, but we know about him from history textbooks, and we know that he used coded language to reinforce his racist rhetoric onto communities of color, mostly. I'm not going to get into the conspiracy theories about, you know, the US technically kind of pumping drugs into communities of color and then masking it as if they are all crack addicts and they need to be criminalized instead of mentally helped. But regardless, that aside, the war on drugs was put in place to reduce the crime in New York City, and it did. The crime went down significantly. There were tougher legislations on criminal acts, or acts that were deemed as criminal, as Bill Clinton, you know, he did the whole like 3 strikes thing, and that increased the prison population by a lot. So now we're in a post like 1980s New York. People can walk the streets and feel relatively safe when they go upstairs to their penthouse in Chelsea, right across the street from like NYCHA housing, where people don't have running water and working stoves, and have to like live as if they were not in one of the like most richest cities in the world, just because they don't make a certain amount of money. And it's disgusting and it's inhumane. The conditions are shit awful, to put it politely, and people should not be subjected to living like that. When we defund police and give them less money, where do we allocate that money to? I, for one, feel like that money should definitely go to NYCHA residents first, because they have been protesting against these conditions for God knows how long, and they should not be subjected to living in said conditions, especially if they're working, especially if they're trying to provide for their families. Like, it's just ridiculous. And sorry, Lynn Patton, whatever your name is, on the Trump administration, but spending a week in a NYCHA house isn't going to fix the problem. And another resource it should be allocated towards is mental health services. Mental health has been criminalized far too long now, and people with addiction to drugs, they should be getting mental health services so that they can't rely on said drugs to function. So I think that instead of calling the police when someone's having a psychotic breakdown, instead of turning them to jail when they are diagnosed with like schizophrenia, we should give them mental health services. Let's say there's a situation where someone's life is on the line and they're at risk of, I don't know, harming themselves and others. There shouldn't be like all these cops pointing guns at them to be like, stand down, do. Like, that just escalates the situation, as we've seen billions of times. Like, I'm not a mental health professional, so I personally don't know exactly what steps to take to de-escalate the situation, but there are mental health professionals out there. There are social workers who do so much and get so little. So we need to increase funding for mental health care workers, definitely, social workers, definitely, and provide those services, and also teach the young ones, you know, these things. There should be programs on how to take care of yourself mentally in schools, you know, like a crash course on anxiety, because that can start from a young age as well. Like, a lot of people feel like defunding the police means that we're going to turn to a system of vigilante justice where people are just going to like wear Batman suits and like patrol the streets and take crime into their own hands. That's not what it means. Like, I'm assuming there still will be a police force of some kind, probably not called the police, because that has been ruined extremely by a long list of crimes and a long list of racial practices that the police was intently made to do. But I think that there should be some kind of, not even enforcement, just like protection for the citizens, and like, we shouldn't rely on one entity to handle all situations. Like, police are definitely not equipped to handle situations where there's mental health involved, not where drugs are involved, if it's harming that person's life. I don't know, like, you call the police when there's a burglary or something. You call the police when, I don't know, you call the fire department if your house is on fire, or if you like boil water too much and then set the stove on fire magically. That hasn't happened to me, not at all. But there's a lot of situations where you call the police and what do? Either someone's hurt, or someone's just scared, or you just feel threatened the whole time. Like, they're just scary. Police are scary, and I have relatives who are police officers as well, and like, they can admit that the system is broken. The system has been broken. The system has always been against Black people, has always been against people of color, and let's not even get into ICE. All right, they're just another entity. But point being, this is all of the events that have been leading up to finally this conversation of what to do with the system of policing that has been around since forever ago. Police were like slave catchers intently. They were made to have an intimidating presence on civilians who they deem are doing bad things. It's time for this to stop. It's time to expose the racist and their full light. Also, for training and things like that, like when we're talking about like defunding certain departments within the system of policing, implicit bias training, yeah, that hasn't really helped that much, and it's kind of impossible to tell someone who's like inherently racist to be like, hey, this is how you don't stop a black person because you just feel like it. That's bad. No. Because from what I know of, when you tell someone and you sit them down by force to listen to you and say, don't do this thing because it's bad, it makes you kind of inclined to do the thing because it's bad. So it's probably a bad example, not the best example, but it hasn't helped. But the point is, these trainings aren't the only thing. The reforming isn't helping, and I think we need like room to make room for some massive change. So what do you guys think? Like, do we defund the police? And once we do, where should the money be allocated to? We need more people to be speaking out about this. And, there's a lot of resources that you can read. I'll put a bunch of them in the description. But yeah, I guess let's just start a conversation. If you are like, I'm still a little iffy about this whole defunding police thing, what we're doing now isn't working. So we gotta keep trying until we find something that works. And until the killings of unarmed civilians stop by the hands of police officers, we're gonna keep fighting, we're gonna keep marching, and you will be hearing this in conversation. The revolution is being televised and YouTubeized. Keep fighting, y'all.
To stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised.